Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, I want to talk about a little bit more over the Brentford performance and some of the amusing responses once again to pointing out potential little red flags in the game as well. I want to talk about Ten Hag and what some of the positives that we can hopefully take away from him staying at United and what we can potentially see this season. That hopefully we will see from him and from the team moving forward. I want to talk about the January transfer window. It's bizarre. It's crazy. We're only 2 months away from it, which means work is already starting to be done and discussions are starting to be had. And there is potential business for United in this window. And then I want to talk about United's best 11 and what we need to do moving forward to progress as a team, regardless of the circumstances, and what we can do to improve things. So let's get right into it. First and foremost, when I was talking about the Brentford thing, one of the things that I found that was really interesting overall is obviously the dialogue over, the front three, over Alejandro Garnacho, because you had a lot of people who firmly believed that Garnacho was by far our best player. And then you have a little bit of the alternative of it. And I think people get a little bit too upset because in my commentary over the game afterwards, I said I did not think it was the best game from him. And I pretty much stand by that. And I will say why exactly. And one of the things I do want to say, about Brentford was a really good 30, 40 minutes of play for United. But again, I don't rate games on just one half alone. I think it was a lot better, but there were still red flags. And the fact that we cannot maintain it for two halves is still an issue that we need to solve. I remember getting a lot of similar responses after Crystal Palace. A bunch of comments. Why is this channel so negative now? Why is the channel so negative now? Look at what we're building. Look at how good we are. Look at all these things that are happening. But if you go and look at what happened after Crystal Palace, it turns out what I said was correct. And that what was working wasn't really necessarily identified, and we were not able to actually continue it. And I have some concerns over Brentford over the short term and the long term. And here's really why. Okay, when we look at kind of the front three, Alejandro Garnacho, Rasmus Højlund, and Marcus Rashford. What I pointed out here is if you go down and look, you can see how much Alejandro Garnacho is getting into the box. Look at how little Rasmus Højlund and Marcus Rashford are getting into the box. Look at how little they're getting touches in the attacking areas, okay? Someone pointed out United had 23 shots in that game. Rasmus Højlund had 2. Marcus Rashford had 2. That's not right. That your two probably most dynamic scorers in the team are getting 4 shots out of your 23. And look at the time of them. Marcus Rashford doesn't get a shot until the 84th minute when the game is pretty much already dead. Rasmus Højlund gets 1 each half, and of course he finishes it and scores. We need to get him the ball more. When you look at Alejandro Garnacho's first half especially, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 shots there, and look at how many are outside the box. That's not what we necessarily want to see when you make the comparison. 1 shot on target, 1 goal, gets 2 shots blocked. So not even, one's within that time. And it's just about getting players in the right positions to succeed. And one of the things that we've struggled with as a team overall is for goals. And I think that, with Alejandro Garnacho, he's very exciting and very dynamic, but he is one-dimensional on that left side. When he plays, he goes for goal. He dribbles in and he shoots every single time. And, if you look at the amount of passes total, 28 passes, but 8 shots compared to 45 passes and 2 shots, 20 passes and 2 shots. He's a player who pretty much his end thing is going to be shoot almost 1/3 of the time. And that's fine, and it's very exciting, and he's a good player, and he continues to develop and get better and more exciting, and he scored a great goal off of a great pass. But remember, that was also a first-time pass into him that he was able to finish. When he's on the ball, his decision-making in that final third tends to be a bit too focused on shooting. And the reason it is an issue is frankly, if you look at our problems with scoring, at this point in time, we're still 11th or 12th, right, in expected goals. And if you look at our expected goals per 90, you'll see that Joshua Zirkzee and Alejandro Garnacho are at the top, but only 2 goals and 1 goal on 3 XG and 2.5 XG. They're getting more than half an XG per 90. You go way down here, you'll find Rasmus Højlund only gets 0.18, and he has 1 goal on only 0.35. You go all the way down to Marcus Rashford, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th on our team in XG per 90, 0.09, 0.6 XG on the entire season for Marcus Rashford, and he has 1 goal. These are the players we need to be, and Ahmad, you could say the same. Look at how little he's getting in terms of chances to get in on net, but he still has the 1 goal. These are the players we need to be getting closer to the goal if we want to fix this goal scoring issue. At one point, again, we were the lowest goal scoring team in the league. We're still near the bottom with 7, but 2 more than Crystal Palace, thankfully. So not all the way on the bottom. But if we want to score more goals, then we need to get those players involved and closer to the goal, not further away. And one of the things that Garnacho has not added to his game yet is finding the striker, especially when he plays on the left side. When he plays on the right, he can be a bit more creative. When he plays on the left, he tends to look for the goal himself. But we need to find Rasmus Højlund more and more. His finishing is incredible, and I think that that's something that needs to be a focus. But if we want to score more goals and not be 17th, then we should be a little more critical. We should criticize and hold a higher standard to our attacking performances when we see games. When we take 23 shots and most of them are bad shots, we need to criticize that a little bit because we can't keep doing that. They were low shots. We only created overall, this is how you kind of know, when you look at the game in general, we only created 1.3 XG on 23 shots. That tells you the vast majority of our chances were really, really low percentage shots. That's not what we want to do, right? They had only 8 shots and accumulated not that much less than we had, right? Not it's a third of the shots. And that's pretty normal. We should be getting 2, 3, 4 XG if we're taking 23 shots in a game. So we need to be better about our shot selection. We need to be looking for the better pass, the better opportunity, the better possession if we want to solve the goal scoring problem. So, mix it up. But, but I think, that's where there's a little bit of red flags. And the other aspect is, Casemiro and Eriksen, again, I said I did not think they had the best games overall. Again, talking about this, Casemiro taking 3 long shots from outside the box, I think you can do away with that. In the first half, both Casemiro and Eriksen were dribbled past 2 times. In the second half, they weren't. But how do we maintain that all game? Those are the things that we need to solve because we cannot have first halves as bad as we had against better teams, or we won't be in the game to come back into it. So there were positives and there were negatives, but there are things to improve upon in there still. And that was really the point of it all, is that, we need to not ignore those things and just say it's all good if we want to continue. Because as we saw after Palace, there's positives, but when you can't put it together for 90, you wonder why. Why is that the case, and what can we do about it? Regardless of that, speaking on Ten Hag, this is obviously his job and what he needs to do. One of the hopes that I have is that, and this is a perspective that I can see, is by Ten Hag not being put under pressure by Ineos, by the management, by them not saying, you're going to lose your job, by them keeping with him, sticking with him, and having him obviously feel confident that he's going to be here all season and see it out. At the very minimum, my hope is that he can think and plan a little bit more for the long term, right? Because I think what all of us don't want to see is we don't want to see Aston Villa games where we're settled in grinding points out game after game with players that we're not going to use. And when I bring up again the Casemiro Eriksen point, here's the thing, right? You have this Project 150. You want to go win the league in 3 years. Eriksen's not going to be here next year. He may not be here past January, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Casemiro may not be here next year. He may not be here past January. We'll talk about that in a minute. So if you play all season with these as core players, you're just starting over next year. And that's what we cannot keep doing is chasing only the now, right? Chasing only the now and not building for the future. And developing the players and patterns and the team that's going to be here. Who could be here in 3 years to win a title and be competing for a title? Who could be here in 2 years that will help us as we start to build up a title charge if that's our intention? Who? Those are the players that we need to be playing week in and week out, getting time, building that relationships with each other, building that chemistry with each other. Those are the players that are important, and those are who we need to be playing. And I don't think that that means you cannot play or use some of these senior players. You know, guys like Johnny Evans and Casemiro and Eriksen, of course, while they're here, you got to use them from time to time. But I don't want to see us, panicking over results and having to play only these players to try to grind out a game, right? It should be, week in and week out. It can be here and there, and in bigger games, perhaps you go with more experience to prevent these huge losses. But in most games that we progress forward, and I believe, as my understanding, that is the hope and intention as well, because Ten Hag in the long term is not just being looked at and judged on how we perform on this season or how we end. Like if we get 5th or 6th, then that's fine, or something like that, or if we just get an FA Cup or something, right? But if we're playing good football, developing a lot of our players, developing those relationships, playing a good style of play, and getting these new signings and new players and young players in, that would change things. So my hope is that, from my understanding of why Ten Hag is being given more time and the feeling like he has job security for the season, is that he can focus on doing that and focus on having us actually progress in our style of play moving forward, and getting the right players on the pitch, because it's going to take time for them to develop in this team. It's going to take time for them. Obviously, you see people getting so, people already deciding things like Xerxes shit, and Ugarte started one game in the Premier League, and he's shit. And there was a while where Delict was shit, and now he's good again. But it takes time for these players to all get in, and get going in the team. But they need to have that ability to get going in the team, and Ten Hag needs to have the ability to get them going without being under pressure to win every single game because his job is on the line. That is understandable. And that's a part of it that I can agree with, why you don't want to do that. Now, of course, that situation in part exists because they kept a manager where things were underperforming, and it's his 3rd season, not his 1st, when you naturally get more leeway. But given that they created that situation, they kind of have to do it. And they kind of have to. They have to give him that leeway and allow us to do that. But he also has to do it. That's sort of the funny part. If Ten Hag is playing the new signings and young players and really working in the way that we want to play, he will have more rope than if he's trying to grind out games with Eriksen, Casemiro, and we're losing. So, he's got to understand and see that too. So that's one of the other reasons that I complain about it a little bit, about the Casemiro Eriksen thing, is that it's not for the future. And the whole explanation behind why you don't change managers now and what we're aiming for is about this long-term project to being regularly competitive to win the league. But that means we need to be taking the steps to do so today. It means we need to be playing the players who need to be getting into the team and building. And that's what I hope we'll see. And so, we need to be seeing Ugarte, we need to be seeing Xerxes, we need to be seeing Ahmad, we need to be seeing the players we want for the long term, right? Rather than chasing the game after game, and Garnacho and Højlund. But I'm saying the players we haven't seen that much over the last couple of years, and the new signings, we need to see them playing. We need to see them getting in. And when Euro returns, we need to see him getting in the team and starting to build up experience and having the ability to not be great immediately, but to continue to foster the relationships with the other players, with the team, and have them all work together. Because in the long term, They're going to be part of the major team. And if we're going to win anything, it's pointless if we play a bunch of players and then next year we're starting over and they're all gone. And now we haven't developed any of these players into the team. We haven't figured out how to use them and haven't put it together. So, and another factor in this that someone reminded me, well, why you don't change managers now then and just figure it out? Well, you got, like I said before, you got to think about the replacement aspect of this as well. And like people were saying, well, let's just go get Thomas Frank. Surely he'd leave Brentford. And it's not like just beating him means he's a bad manager, because he's a very good manager and I like him a lot. But someone reminded me of this, that I didn't know, and this is true of a few managers. You know how much it would cost likely to get Thomas Frank out of Brentford right now? 20 million. So you're talking about a nearly probably 35 million pound exercise to replace Ten Hag with Thomas Frank mid-season right now. United aren't going to do that, and that's not amortized. That's just a 35 million hit. That is a lot of money to say, yeah, well, let's get Thomas Frank and start over mid-season, and it may be better, it may be not. So there's a lot of, and like we've talked about, Thomas Tuchel not available. So there isn't this ideal situation mid-season that doesn't hamstring you financially to go and get another manager. So it's better to stick with Ten Hag. This is the argument. This is the logic. It's better to stick with Ten Hag and follow through on all of this. And again, you do have a backup plan if things don't go right. But I'm taking the attitude of, I'm just going to assume Ten Hag is here for the year. And so with that, my hope is to see us integrate the new players, integrate young players, and really focus on trying to play the way we want to play moving forward. And if there's less pressure on him, then hopefully we do that instead of going to, grind it out results. In terms of January, I shared sort of the Ineos strategy, I think, towards the end of the window, where I said, look, the way that they looked at the, there's a whole video on this, where the way that they looked at the team overall, transfers overall, is they said, good, what are all the transfers we need to make? What are all the improvements that we need to make to become a fully competitive team? And they're going to go through that list and get them done in order, as many as they can each window. Excuse me. As many as they can each window. And it's not a 3-in, 3-out type of policy. So they did. They went down the list. They said, all right, we need another striker. Fine. We need another 6. Really bad. Okay, we did that. All right, we need center backs. Good. We're overhauling the whole center back thing. In the end, we want 3. So they got 2 of them done. They got another fullback in. So they looked at all of that and they kept going down the list. Well, we've talked about this before. But what's left? When you look at it from their perspective right now, what's left is 1 to 2 more midfielders, because when Eriksen leaves, you need another kind of 8. And you're not totally sure on Mount. So you need an 8 to creative 10. Casemiro leaves, you need another 6. You don't have that. So you need at least 2 more midfielders. You need a winger. But it's not as urgent right now because you still have all these players there. And by the way, there is talk of Antony going on loan to Ajax. This was confirmed by their kind of tier 1 guy, the Mike guy over there. There's talk of Ajax potentially looking at a loan for Antony in January. And I can tell you that United would certainly accept it and would take a loan. If they could, I don't know if he would. But yeah, it's that's an interesting one, by the way. But I'll come back to why that's important. But United do have a fair number of wingers right now, and a fair number of forwards at the moment. Good players. We need to see that. And then we know that they wanted another left-footed center back, and we can see that that is a bit of an issue. Lisandro Martinez, I think, has been a bit exposed this season in that left-sided center back, to where, Johnny Evans is outperforming him. And a big part of the reason for it is just he's not a good channel defender, not a good space defender. And some of the ways that we've played have played into his weaknesses for sure. But you can see, in a lot of those games, why, if you had, for example, Gerard Braithwaite, who was their top target coming into the window at center back there, you'd have way more pace running with those players, in those spaces one-on-one where we were getting attacked down, that, allows you to take a little more risks. So That is still an area of focus. And then left back. So in January, they're not, it's a balance here of financially, what can you do during this year, given that we don't have Champions League and some of the other things that are going on there, and figuring out what is viable and what can we do, because they're not saying they don't want to go waste a bunch of money in January, but what they'll look for are potential opportunities. And so the two areas that so far, as I understand it, like at center back, I don't believe they feel that there's a viable opportunity because you need some outs for some of these ins, right? And they're not going to be moving on Harry Maguire or Lisandro Martinez in January, and they're not going to move. I don't think they're going to move on Lisandro Martinez in general, but they're not going to be moving on a center back in January. Lindelof is not going to leave at that time, very likely. And you kind of have a lot of them, especially as Lenny Oro comes back. So that one makes more sense to wait until summer for. Left back, you still don't have fit and healthy left backs. You can see, that we still have this issue on the fullback front. Mazraoui, the heart issue, which it's great. He's okay, and he'll be back, and maybe we'll get to see him on the left side. But, you've got to do something there because it's a serious problem. And there's major concerns, obviously, as we know, over Luke Shaw and Tyrell Malacia being fit and able to actually fulfill that position. So that's an area of like, okay, we might have to do something here. And we've talked about the names. They look at Anthony Robinson. They've looked at Kirkes. They've looked at Ait Nouri. They're keeping an eye, obviously, on Alvaro Fernandez because we do have that buyback. That was confirmed by Ten Hag. We do have that buyback, and that's an interesting one. Can it be activated in January? Could we bring in back a very good left back for 15 million? Would he want the move at that point in time? But that is an interesting one to keep in mind. Then, in the winger situation, if Anthony were to leave, United might look to a winger. They are looking at a winger for next summer. We've talked about some of the young names and people they might look at there. We'll come back to that. Eriksen believed he was going to leave this last summer. He could leave in January, and so could Casemiro. Is it 100% likely? Not necessarily, but you have other places that they could go. Eriksen going to the last 6 months of his contract. He could sign a pre-contract, and they might say, okay, well, let's just, he's not going to be here for the long term, so why don't we just look to move him and see if we can bring someone in. Now, how can you do that? One of the advantages is let's say you go for a young player who's not on a super high fee. If you get rid of his wages, you know how the whole amortization things work. Potentially, you actually end up in a better amortization situation, and you have a very limited cost to bring a player in. If you can move Eriksen for $5 million and get the $250K off the books, then you're saving over the course of that 6 months, essentially $5 million because he was free, plus about $6 million in wages. So that's $11 million. Well, if you get a player on $75K, that's only $1 million in wages. So if you're buying them for $30-40 million, you've actually saved money, on the amortization of that player. So we've discussed amortization and all that plenty of times. Hopefully it's understandable. But between him or Casemiro, because of the wages that they're on, if you could shift them and bring in a young player who's in the 30-40 million bracket or lower, you could actually improve your financial situation in the short term and get ahead of summer and start getting some of these players in. So, that's another one of the reasons why, I'm hoping we don't tend to need them so much, and we get Bruno and Kabi and Ugarte going as a trio there, and hopefully Mason Mount at some point here, is because if we're so reliant on Casemiro and Eriksen, it's going to limit some of the plans we want to do, and then if they end up leaving in the next summer, then it's pointless. When we could potentially utilize them to make some moves in January and accelerate the rebuild of this team. We talked about Franco Mastantuono from South America as a potential creative 8. Sfera Nipan. Now they are in a January. Both of them, I believe, are January to December leagues, the normal calendar year leagues. So they're available in January. These players, and then there's other names of other midfielders. Now Angel Gomez, I've seen mentioned a bit, and I believe I mentioned him in my live last week. They're clubs looking at signing him in January, but United are not among the clubs looking at signing him in January as of now, as per my understanding. Obviously, they're aware, but I don't believe they feel he fits. And I think that they want a little more physical player. Adam Wharton, someone that they've really liked for deeper, as we kind of heard, he's had a rough start to the season as of Crystal Palace, but apparently he has a groin injury that might need to get surgery that he's had since the summer, and that might explain some of the poor start from him. But regardless, I don't think he'd be available in January. There's Hayden Hackney at Middlesbrough. Maybe he would be. There's other names, and my point more on it is just that, this is an area of potential opportunity. And why I think, again, if we're not under pressure to win every game and we can start to play the future, then we're not so reliant on these players, and potentially we could make some moves. And if you're doing that, if you were to lose Eriksen and Casemiro in January, just if, right, and bring in younger players, it's going to take more time to get them in. But we need these times and these experiences to get these players going and to get them up to speed and to build that chemistry within the team. So it's a balance, when you're talking about now and for the future. And in terms of the United hierarchy, they want that balance. They want to look at it and say, we want to be building towards the future. We want to be developing the players we need to develop, playing the players we're signing. We want to be able to move players on and continue to lower that age and build for players who will be here for the next 5 to 7 years and be a part of that team that competes for titles. So that's their hope, and one of the reasons as well they don't necessarily want tons of pressure on Ten Hag. If it goes so bad, they'll just let him go and stick with Van Nistelrooy for the rest of the season, rather than doing like this build-up of like, oh, you're on notice in 3 games and blah, 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 and all of that stuff. But in general, they don't want him to feel like he has to manage from a game-to-game basis. That's not workable for anybody. So that's part of why, of everything that's going on. And we do have plans in January to do business if we can. And so that, again, I would be okay with that. Look, I look at the season and I think we're not going to accomplish that much. I don't see us being able to. But I look at the season and I think, yeah, I don't want us to be relying on Casemiro and Eriksen, because if we could move one of them and get, and make sure we're getting Ugarte going and Kobbie Mainoo going more and all of that. But if we could move one of them and get a Nipan or a Mestentuonu or a similar type player and start getting them into the team, for the long run, that's way better. It's going to have a way better impact on us and our season in the future and the trajectory of the club if we can do that. So, yeah, I don't want to see us starting over next year and it's like, well, we were reliant on all these players and we didn't actually build anything this season. I don't want to see that, because last year, I don't think we built anything. I don't think we developed anybody. Like we kind of got Rasmus Højlund going a little bit, but not really. We're seeing even more development from him this year. We kind of, Garnacho was already kind of going. Last season was such a waste. Between the injuries and between, falling into the shell, I don't feel like we really developed anybody, and it was mostly development of players. I want to see us developing. I want to see us playing the way we need to play, and building the team that's going to actually compete for titles and seeing them play and not just playing all these, playing players out of urgency and emergency because we're backs against the wall every single game. So that's my hope and as well, my understanding of what United would like from this season too. So maybe, not having Ten Hag under pressure supports that and may allow us as well to do some business in January if we can. And they are looking at it and they are exploring it. So it's worth paying attention to. In terms of the best 11, I was having this discussion with Phil in the podcast yesterday, and I thought, when I look at it, this is what I feel would be, right now our best 11. And I say if they're healthy, obviously, because I've got Shaw in here because we don't really have another left back. When healthy, I would put this is what I would put, and I think that Garnacho is still a fantastic player, but I think that you do need to get Ahmad going, and I would really like to see players hold down a position. If Garnacho's a left winger now, after playing right wing for most of last year where he was actually doing really well, then fine. But then keep him on the left and keep Rashford on the left and get Ahmad going on the right and sign a right winger like we intend to, right? Then do that. Keep them in their positions developing. I think that, if we play like that, then that'll work. When Lenny Yoro comes in, I would put him in here and swap De Ligt to the left, because I think that would be our best center back pairing. And then obviously, because Shaw is just not healthy, that we need to sign a left back to have a best 11. But I would hope that we play our best 11 most games to get them going, and then we rotate players into the positions they're supposed to be in, and we don't do so much chopping and changing. Obviously, we need Kobbie Mainoo to come back, but when fit, my hope is we play our best 11 most games to develop them for the future. Because, you know, if you fit Lenny Yoro in here, if you fit a left back in here, if Shaw can't stay healthy, I think every one of these players could be part of not necessarily a title-winning 11. I'm not saying you wouldn't improve upon this, but a team that can grow into a competing team and could be key parts to it, along with the key players that you're going to be rotating in there, like Alejandro Garnacho into these positions as well. You know, if you're putting Yoro in here, Martinez in as well, and you know, Mazraoui for at times for Dalot, etc. So that's what I want to see, though. I want to see these guys plus those maybe three players, Garnacho, Mazraoui, and Lenny Yoro or Lisandro Martinez, rotating into their position, and I want to see that going ahead as much as possible moving forward. So hopefully that's what we see and what we can build on. That's my opinion. You know, let me know, what is your best 11? What do you think? Do you understand what I'm saying, what I'm looking at? Because those are the negatives and positives I take away from a game like Brentford. It's good to get a win, but I don't see as much to build upon. I don't think for the long term pushing Rashford back out to the right is going to do anything. We've tried it under Ten Hag. We tried it under Solskjaer. These kinds of chops and changes can have immediate impacts, but long term they tend to fade off. And in general, I want to see us playing our players in their best positions where they're supposed to be, and developing for the future. And hopefully, with some of the pressure reduced, that's what we'll see moving ahead. And then hopefully, as we get closer to January, there's more business to be done there. Okay, that's what I have for today. Thanks for listening. I hope it's informative, at least outside of all my opinions, with regards to Ten Hag and why he, you know, is why they don't want to put the pressure on him, on some of the issues with managers, on our January plans, and how they're viewing the transfer targets. I hope all that was interesting, in addition to all my personal opinions and things that I put into everything. But I always will too. So thank you for watching. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to do a live with Darnish on the tactics. We're going to do it on Big Up, and we're going to go through the tactics board and actually do that talk, and then we will post it on YouTube, so you can watch it here. But we're going to do it on there. We're going to record on there because we can do that now, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. And then obviously Thursday we'll do pre-match on the Europa League, watch along there, post-match takeaways, and then Friday, another pre-match for the weekend, and pre-match live and votes and all of that. So a busy week. We're back to it with football. Hope everybody enjoyed the break. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. See you in the next one.